Welcome to Follow Your Joy podcast, where intuition is the doorway to your wisdom, your genius, and your joy. I'm your host, Marla Diane, and I've been transforming creative entrepreneurs' lives for over 26 years. Through 2 businesses as a success coach and a business strategist, and prior to that, an entertainment publicist and a talent manager for 2 decades. It's time to make joy your inner GPS for life and business decisions rather than lean on your logic and reason first. You'll not only be following what is most authentic to you and for you, but you will live the beautiful life that's meant just for you. You'll come to learn that following your joy is a life and a business strategy. Listen in for inspiring entrepreneurial stories and solocasts that illuminate how by trusting your intuition, you'll create a fulfilling result. Want to learn how to access, trust, or up-level your intuition? Join me in the conversation to find out how. Well, hello, my friends. Today, we are diving into the power of a personal brand using an on-camera presence from a 2-decade-long expert's point of view. So I know some of you know this about my background, but those of you that don't, here's a little bit of that backstory that has a lot to do with our topic today. And that is, I spent the first half of my career, 22 years, as an entertainment publicist in Hollywood. And what does that mean? I monetized my PR journalism degree into a very dynamic, very fun, creative career, composing news and feature angles to pitch media and get coverage for my celebrity clients, my visual and performing, artists. And what that looked like was red carpet events and film premieres and photo shoots and, Hollywood parties and all of that really fun stuff. And being the gatekeeper, right, to some pretty high profile celebrities way back then. It was like in the 80s, everybody. I've been around a while. And I loved those years until about the 20-year mark. I was done. It was 2006. And I remember what was going through my mind. And I wonder, those of you that were around then, what was happening in 2006? And I personally desired, it was kind of an intuitive nudge. We're going to talk about intuition today, but it was an intuitive nudge. I desired something more meaningful at that point in my career, right? At that point in my life. I wanted a reinvention, and especially because everything was changing around me, right? My PR industry was turning into this thing called social media, which I had no clue what the heck that meant, right? 2006. And what was happening, right? The world was evolving, right? It was innovating. There was viral videos. What the heck was that? Right? What was a blog? And Facebook was just coming on the landscape. And I went, okay, definitely time to reinvent. Yeah. And, all of my peers, right? We were all looking for ways to learn and get in the game, this online thing. Didn't know what to do. So I had no idea. But what I did do is I kind of put it out to the universe and really did some discovery for about a year. And fast forward, I was led to a coach, and she said, you know what? You've been doing personal branding for celebrities for 20 years. She says, why don't you teach? Why don't you teach personal branding to entrepreneurs and how to turn themselves into a brand and market it and monetize it through email, blog, and social media? And that's where I was wanting to learn. I went, okay. And it was kind of 11th hour after a year. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Right? How am I going to move this career and use everything that I've just spent, a lot of time in? So anyway, that was the first iteration. And that's when my coaching career began. It's 2008. And I called my business Embrace Your Spotlight, because I was teaching entrepreneurs, which most of them, and our guest, which you'll hear from her, is that most people, they're not so cool about being in the spotlight. Yeah, not good. And I personally wasn't either, because as a publicist, and this was what began my transformational journey, is that, as a publicist, you're behind the scenes. You're not in front of the camera. You're not in the spotlight. And so, believe it or not, as gregarious and outgoing as I am and was, man, it's like, put me in the spotlight, not comfortable. And so here I was coaching that, but I had to also learn, now that I was a coach, I had to learn the whole business model. I had to learn how to be out in front, if you will. And it began just an incredible career, which those of you know, it's now 15 years. So now I'm, have been coaching entrepreneurs, business, and life design, and beyond the personal brand. But I still do coach personal branding. Okay. And by the way, yes, you can, read more about that story and go to my website. You'll know that. And if it sparks your curiosity about your own personal brands, I have a short form. There's a link in the show notes, and we can kind of begin that conversation. So this topic lays the foundation for the importance of today's guest, Kelley Day. And she was right there with me the last 2 decades, although we are in separate locations on some level, in the journalism field, right? But hers was on the broadcast side in front of the camera, whereas mine was behind the camera, right? Pitching media to interview my clients. I was pitching people like her, right? All right. Because as a publicist, as you kind of gathered by now, is that it's about storytelling and crafting news angles, right? That's the core of your expertise in having media contacts. Okay. So today you will hear from, right behind the scenes, how Kelley's on-camera journalism career shaped her stellar reputation and led her to then teach on-camera presence with Keri Murphy and her Inspired Living platform, where her signature program, and I remember this from years ago, and it's literally her signature program that put her on the map, the It Factor, right? And it evolved her company into a multi-million-dollar brand for women entrepreneurs. And Kelley has been with Keri for how many years now? 7 years. Okay, 7 years as her media coach and on-camera expert, right? So as a formal introduction, Kelley Day reported and anchored the news for 23 years on local ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox stations in 4 states. After leaving the grind, and it is a grind, a lot of heavy deadlines, of the daily news business, she decided to take her talents, right, off air to help business owners get media attention to grow their bottom line. And Kelley believes that appearances on the news should be part of any successful marketing plan, obviously, especially today, everyone. So showing up as an expert on newscasts or lifestyle shows can obviously boost your credibility, right, as a creative entrepreneur, and the positioning of that, right? And Kelley loves to teach people how to do just that. All right. So her extensive career includes news anchor, reporter, producer, writer, voicing, presenting, and of course, composing a personal brand story that will gain media attention, right? Oh, wow. So as what I call a soul sister in journalism, helping women embrace their spotlight, I warm welcome Kelley to Follow Your Joy.
Thank you, Marla. So nice to be on with you today. Man, every word you said, I was like, I just want you and I to lock ourselves in a room for a whole day with a pot of coffee because we would never stop talking. Um, it's great to hear just the slightly different world that you were in, but we were both in it just from a different angle.
That's right.
And you and I have talked about the big difference between being behind that camera and being in front of that camera.
That's right.
And there are people on both ends who, when they have to make the switch, it's just as uncomfortable. You just heard me tell you this before we started taping.
Yeah.
It's just as uncomfortable for someone like me to learn the back end of being behind the camera and actually running a business or organizing documents and, all the things that publicists work on. That is very, very difficult, was very difficult for me to wrap my brain around because I was so solidly in front of the camera. And so when I met Keri Murphy years ago, gosh, it's probably 10 years ago, I met her at a cocktail party in Portland, Oregon, where we both grew up. She said, "Wow, Kelley Day, what are you doing these days? You're not on the news anymore." And I said, "Well, Keri, I think I really have something to teach these business owners because I received, as you can, I mean, Marla, I don't know, tens of thousands, let's say, of press releases, right?
Yep.
Over 23 years.
Oh, yeah.
And almost all of them, a big, big, big percentage of them just fell short because, like you said, they didn't know how to create what I call a news hook. It's even stickier than a news angle. It's an actual hook. And I said, "Keri, I'd love to teach business owners how to use this. Do you think that people would pay me to do that?" Because I didn't know. 23 years as a newscaster, that's all I knew. That is all I knew. And that's the minute she said, "Kelley, not only, yes, can you make a business out of that, but how's it going? And would you like to come teach my clients that as well?" Again, to complete their visibility marketing plan. So she believes so solidly in teaching people how to use video and be on camera. But man, when you then add in this piece of now let's get you booked as an expert on different things, then like you just said, you're visible, but more than that, you're credible. And then more than that, you become positioned.
Correct.
And as that expert. So it's a little layering, like let's get you on video. And like you said, then when that whole social media thing hit, I remember that too. I started in 91 and it wasn't there. And then when it came, yes, you should always use it. But when you think about social media, anyone can create their own social media presence. So you can put out there whatever you want.
Right.
But when you are chosen, right, to be seen on a newscast or a lifestyle show as an expert in your industry or your field and be interviewed, that gives you that extra layer of credibility in the marketplace because someone chose you and gave you that piece of visibility. You weren't just doing it yourself online.
Right.
So anyway, we got together and I said, "Keri, I have to tell you something. I don't think I have an entrepreneurial bone in my body." And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I want to do this, but what I've been beating myself, it took me a whole year, Marla, of beating myself up over not wanting to run a business, but really wanting to do this." So the fact that we met was so beautiful for me because she said, "Kelley, if you don't want to run your own business, then stop it." Because she does a lot of coaching like you, Marla, around what are you happy doing? And you and I just talked about, are you in your zone of genius? Yeah. And are you in your lane that you love? And if you're not, and something's holding you back, something's stopping you, and you've got a roadblock, you've got to kick that damn thing down and you've got to get through it. And so my roadblock, I realized, was trying to run a business. And so being on her team now as the on-camera coach, obviously, and the media coach, it has just opened up and helped me blossom into this, my next chapter. We all have these next chapters, but much like you, I was reading in your bio about how you were born with a happy chip. And I loved that, Marla, because I was born with a happy chip too. I don't know if I'm not happy, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Something, the world is like off its axis and not, it's not rolling through the universe the right way. And if I'm not happy, people around me feel it and they're very affected by it. And I realized that during that year or two, when I was trying to run my own business, my happy chip was not working. And no
Yep.
one knew. They're like, Kelley, what is going on with you?
Mhm.
And so finally, when I realized that I don't want to know how the sausage is made, I just want to show up every day and do my thing. And I
Mhm.
found inspired living and I'm able to do that. My happy chip is rolling. Everything's back on
Yeah,
kilter.
good. Yeah,
And so, yeah, I have found my joy. I have
right.
found
Yeah.
my joy, like you say.
Yeah. Therein lies the the premise to not only what I coach, but the name of the podcast, Follow Your Joy.
Exactly.
It is a must. It's not just a nice thing to feel, right?
Right.
So, okay, so why don't you share with us? I mean, why, and this is not going back a long time ago. So, why this focus? What happened in your personal life that you chose this route? Why broadcast journalism? What was going on with Kelley?
Well, little young 15-year-old Kelley Day. And by the way, that is my real name. I think my mom just knew I was going to be on the news. People,
I know, right?
Marla, that is the number one question all those years that I would get. Not, they didn't want to talk about the lead story last night. They wanted to know if Kelley Day was my real name. I'm like, yes, that's my real name. Anyway, 12 to 15-year-old Kelley Day, it was so funny. I mean, I've always been the alpha. I've always been a confident person, happy. So people would ask me as a young Kelley Day, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always thought it was funny that they would say, what do you want to be? Because in my mind, I was like, well, I am going to be a news anchor. And I really, and then in my head, I said, duh, to them, in my own mind.
Mhm.
It was the clearest, easiest thing for me. And like you said, was it intuitive? Yes. I just saw that. I saw it as my future. And I knew I would be good at it and I knew I would love it.
Yeah.
I remember my mom saying, well, maybe you should watch Connie Chung a little more. That's back when Connie Chung was on.
I remember that.
And yeah, don't you? And she said, maybe you should watch the news a little more then instead of going to the mall. And I kind of thought, I'll get to it. I just knew it. I really did. And I went off to University of Arizona. I majored in, it was called media arts there.
Mhm.
Then I went up to the Carmel Salinas Monterey market and I got my first internship, not paid, slept on my friend's futon one summer, and we were writing the news, Marla, on typewriters.
I know. I was writing press releases on typewriters.
Yep.
IBM Selectrics.
Yep. 1991, the 5-ply paper, remember, that had
Yep.
like the pink, the gold, the goldenrod, the green, and the white,
Oh, yeah.
ripping scripts and all of that. So I'm glad that I started in the business back then because I got to see real journalism, and
That's
like
right.
you talk about your industry when it really dramatically changed.
Mhm.
And that was kind of your time, but
Mhm.
mine did as well. And I'm glad I was in it in the era I was in. I
Yeah.
really am glad. Newsrooms were still staffed. I still had time and
Mhm.
resources to work on something, to get the right interview,
Yep.
to make sure it was fair
Mhm.
and dare I say fair and balanced.
Don't even go there.
No, I'm not going to go there. But it was fair and it was balanced. That was not a tagline from a certain network.
Right.
My stories were fair and my stories were balanced because I had the time and the resources to do it back in the day. So long story short, getting on the news, being on the news, yes, it took a lot of work.
Mhm.
What I always tell people is, to me, it was so clear, but I never focused on that end goal. I just knew it was there.
Yeah.
What I did is I always naturally just focused on the next stepping stone to get across the river. Like where's that next rock I need to jump on?
Mhm.
And so I would find that rock and jump on that. And then I would find the next rock and jump on that. And before I knew it, I was across the river and I was an anchor.
Yeah. I mean, did you, when you were young, and I'm going to, share what was the defining moment for me to be a publicist. It was not easy. In other words,
Mhm,
it didn't come to me as a child like yours.
mhm.
Um, did you like at 8 years old see an anchor on TV and go, oh, that's what I want to be? In other words, how did you even get the idea to be a newscaster?
That's such a good question because my little brother will tell you
Yeah.
years and years and years later, we found this little box of cassette tapes. Because my father, my dad, who was my hero and just the greatest man I ever knew, he would come home at night and he would sit down on the ground with my little brother and I, and he would tape record us and say, how was your day? Like, what happened? Just remember those little cassette tapes, and there was a little external mic, and he would sit down and just talk to us because he wanted to have our little voices, recorded at all the different years.
Yeah.
Well, we found one of the tapes where apparently I had gone in without my parents knowing, and I was like, welcome to the Mikey Day and Kelley Day show. Today I'm talking to Mikey Day. I'm like, what did you do today, Mikey Day?
Oh my God, he
Well,
was
I
setting
went,
you
he
up.
was like, he must have been, because he was 6 years younger. So he must have been 3 years old. He could barely talk. And he was like, I went to the market with mom. I'm like, well, what did you guys buy at the market? Well, we bought Kleenex and we bought milk. I mean, I just think I was a natural little interviewer and host, I guess. From when I was a kid, I didn't know it. I mean, I was the kid who organized the whole carnival in the neighborhood. I was the kid. It
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it is my nature.
So it was really, I mean, what it sounds like to me, because there's always a, follow the breadcrumbs, right?
Mhm,
Is
mhm.
that it began, I mean, your dad kind of set you up for this. I mean, whether he realized it or not, because he
Yeah.
was looking for ways to capture, your voices so that you had, a capsule, if you will, when you got older to listen to yourself, which is a great gift from a parent. But he was setting you up, to be
It
what
does
you
make
are
sense
today.
now. Yep.
Yeah.
It does make sense looking back on it. And the other thing is that I had parents who never, ever, ever one time said you can't.
Yeah.
When I would very confidently as a child say, I'm going to be a news anchor, they'd say, well, you're going to be the best one there ever was then, Kelley. What do we need to do to help you out? What can we do?
Oh,
And
fantastic.
I did not come from a wealthy family. I had no connections in news. They didn't
Yeah.
know where to start, but they helped me figure out here's what you should major in.
Yeah.
And I remember that first internship, that first
Hmm.
summer, my mother kept saying, did you send back that form? Did you call that person back? I
Hmm.
had parents who saw in me and knew
Yeah.
what I should do.
Yeah.
And they said, and now that you bring that up, Marla,
Mm-hmm.
it does not surprise me
Mm-hmm.
that the most stuck and unhappy I ever got was when I came out of that energy and I was trying to run a business.
Right. Correct.
Because now this makes sense to me. It was so
Hmm.
obvious, it was so in me. So I think when we talk about the joy, especially the way you speak to your clients and listeners about finding that joy,
Right.
you all already know it.
Hmm.
You
That's right.
know when you're vibrating on that level, you know when your energy is at the surge, and you know when you step into that other role and that vibration goes away. Now, that doesn't mean we all
Hmm.
have to do things that we don't like to do sometimes. I
Yeah.
get that.
Yeah. Of
But
course.
I learned it in a very dramatic fashion
Mm.
in my mid to late 40s, that I stepped way too far out of that vibration, that now that you're bringing it up, Marla, I realize I had in me
Yeah.
from the time I was 8 years old. And when I stepped too far out of it,
Yeah. You're out of sync. You're out of alignment.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then when I came
100%.
back to it,
Hmm.
my joy came back to
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
I think some people forget that sometimes, and they step too far away and they never come back.
Yeah. Or they come back and it's, years later. And that's the important part about how joy and intuition are interconnected, right? They are interconnected. Yeah, they're completely interconnected, which is, why I've chosen that obviously as a theme. And it's very much a part of my brand and how I operate, how I coach, especially my women, it's your joy comes from listening to your intuition. That is the wisest part of who you are, right? And not getting, of course, if you will, advice from outside sources. It's like you have those answers if you're willing to listen, you know?
Exactly. And I think that when we all go through big transition, like I will tell you this, I did the news, like I said, 23 years. So the first 5 years, Barla, I was on morning shows.
Yeah.
And that was, the alarm went off at 1:32 a.m. And I was at the state, but I loved it. I was in my 20s. I had tons of energy and I was at the station and, on the air and working my tail off. And then the 17 years following those first 5 were nightly newscasts. So I was at the station at 2:30, anchored the 5, the 6, the 11, but I didn't walk in the door till midnight. Monday through Friday for 17 years. So most of my adult life, right? Now, that didn't feel bad until the day it did feel bad. And that's when I decided that my contract was up. And I said, listen, I do not want to take my foot off the gas pedal of my career at all. But I can no longer do the 11 o'clock news. I'll come in and do the 5 and 6. I'll do the noon, the 5 and the 6, whatever you need me to do. But I need to walk out of here at a normal time. And the station got sold at that moment. And the new people came in and said, that's a deal breaker for us. Our team at 6 needs to be our team at 11. And I said, okay, bye.
Like, bye.
And everyone thought I had totally lost my marbles. They thought I had lost my mind. My mother, my friends, everyone was like, are you sure? And at that moment, I was sure. I was really sure. And I know that to the rest of the world, it seemed like I was throwing my career away. Yeah. But I was choosing my life at that moment. And I did it and I loved it. But I also realized I was starting to resent it a little bit because of the schedule. And so I always encourage people to listen, like you said, to that. My intuition was screaming at me and it was becoming a deafening roar that I couldn't quiet anymore. And I said, all right, it's time. Yeah. And then when I sat down, I was on an airplane from Portland to Boston to visit some family. And I just opened up my computer and I just started writing everything I could teach people about how to pitch to the news so that they can be that expert. And I thought, man, this is really good. This is really valuable for businesses. Now, you, in your career, you were dealing with big entertainers, red carpet type people. I kind of have this pull on my heart for the small business owner, the medium business size owner, who needs to learn that you don't have to pay a publicist unless you are of that caliber in Hollywood. Obviously you do. There's a real reason behind paying a publicist. But anyone can learn how to pitch to the media, because what a lot of people don't understand is every single day, I always say the news and lifestyle shows are a very, very hungry beast, and they must be fed 365 days a year. So the amount of content that we are looking for and the amount of experts we're seeking out every day in the newsroom to interview on any given subject you could think of is never ending. And so what a lot of business owners think is, why would they want to do a story on me? And I always teach them now, that's how most people pitch to me. And you're right. Guess what? I don't want to do a story on you. I don't care about you. Yeah. But if you come up with a news hook, that's right, that my viewers will care about, then I need you as the expert to interview about that news hook you've created. And when I teach this to people, it's the aha moments they have are just, that's what lights me up now. And I love it. And my vibration, my energy, my intuition is all back in line, because I think a lot of us who spend a couple decades, much like you did, crafting or learning a certain craft, we do have such valuable stuff to teach the world that maybe we don't even give ourselves credit for sometimes.
I agree. My gosh. Well, I mean, it's, I spent so many years. In fact, one of the reasons that I finally got burned out on 20 years of it, besides, okay, it's time to reinvent, I got so tired of the pitching because
Yeah.
here's the reality behind the scenes, right? And those of you that are, I don't know, if you're listening and you're looking into a career as a publicist, do it. It's fantastic experience. It's fabulous. Do it. But I eventually got so tired of the pitching. I'm like, I cannot pitch one more media or I'm going to scream, right? Because a good part of, and what you're talking about, yes, news, media needs, from whether it's TV, magazines, etc. Almost no longer newspapers, but thank God they're still there. But the
Yes.
point is, it's all in the follow-up. I spent more time, Kelley,
Mhm.
this is on the phone. Okay. I was during that time too. It's like, yeah, we had some computers, but everything was follow up, right? I was on the phone all day long if I wasn't out at an event with a client,
Right.
pitching and following up. I had lists upon follow-up lists upon follow-up lists
Mhm.
of each client and who I was going to follow up and when did I follow. It was crazy,
It's a lot.
crazy.
It's a lot. And I'm glad you brought that up, because this is one of the fundamentals that I love teaching our clients is this.
Mm.
You should never pitch to the media just once. Okay.
Correct. That is
Because
right.
here's the deal, guys.
Yeah.
There are slow news days and there are plane crash news days
Mhm.
and there are, fireworks news days. Just because you don't hear back from them once does not mean at all
Mm-mm.
you aren't a valuable expert for them to interview on a different day and on a different news hook.
That's right.
So that's the other thing I love teaching people is they'll say, well, I sent something in about my business and I never heard back. Okay. Again, that's the incorrect way to do it. I love working with people. When I'm done with them, they have a whole list
Right.
of news hooks that not only are good, and you'll understand the difference between this, they're good story ideas
Right.
and they're good segment ideas, which are two
Correct.
different things. But
Mm.
what I tell them is this should be part of your monthly and quarterly marketing plan. You
Right.
send those in with a fresh news hook, which is a whole different story for the
Mm-hmm.
viewer, and you get on their radar. Now, again, it doesn't matter if they call you back or not. On a slow news day, guess what? Guess what we do in newsrooms? Holy crap, our hair's on fire. What do we have to put on the darn airwaves today? And
Yeah.
if I've received, 3 or 4 different ideas from you that are news hook ideas, not just, hi, I'm Kelley, come do a story on me. I will look you up and say, hey guys, I've got a bunch of stuff from this person. Let's give them a call. They seem to really have great news hooks. The other thing people don't realize is that, like you said, you got tired of pitching. You are never, ever bothering someone in a newsroom if you pitch a story idea to them. You are doing them a huge favor, because the reality is every day in a newsroom, and no one will know who these people are, but the assignment editor, the executive producer, the show producers, the anchors, the reporters, we are required to walk in that newsroom every day. And I was required to have at least 3 story ideas. Every single person at that story meeting table, that happens twice a day in every newsroom on the planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have those story ideas to bring in every day, our bosses are saying, what are you doing twiddling your thumbs over there? And so we appreciate it when people send ideas in. And the goal, if you really are serious about using this as a piece of marketing for yourself, is never to be on just one time. It's to be the go-to person.
Right.
And I always use the example, Marla, of like, if there's a volcano that erupts somewhere on the planet Earth and you're watching your local news, they always use the same guy, right? And it's probably the geology professor from the local college. He's the guy. And they get him on and they interview him that night about that particular volcano in that particular part of the world. And hey, talk to our viewers and explain it in layman's terms what happened there. And so you want to become that local geology professor in your industry for the newsrooms. So if you are in real estate, I mean, my goodness, I love working with real estate agents because there's a real estate story on the news every day.
Every day. Yep.
And we in the newsroom would always say, who do we have? That's what we always ask ourselves in newsrooms. Who do we have right now in the Rolodex who we can call when there's a huge, interest rate hike?
Yeah.
Get our real estate agent on, get our mortgage broker on who we know.
Mhm.
If you're and this goes for health coaches, mental health coaches, a new study came out about the effects of, exercise on teenagers and anxiety and suicide rates. Who do we have?
Yep.
Who do we have that we can talk to right now, and they can fill in the blanks and add value to that? And so you name whatever industry you're in, and I will come up with it. There's not one person I've ever worked with where I'm like, I wonder, there are ways to find it. And I'd like to give a little bit of meat, if I can, to your listeners, because this is really valuable for anyone who wants to learn how to pitch to the media. They need to stay up on statistics, trends, and projections in their industry. Statistics, trends, and projections. That is how you develop a news hook, as opposed to a hi, I'm Kelley, come do a story on me. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So the viewer is interested in those statistics, trends, and projections. And then you offer yourself up as the expert who can, again, fill in the blanks, flesh out the facts about those statistics, trends, and projections, because those are the news.
There you go.
Not you're not the news. Those are the news. And then you use yourself as the one who gets to show up and speak on those topics.
Yep.
That's how you get that credibility. And then that's how you get that positioning.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. And I've seen it works. It really, really works, because I've had clients, or back in the day when I was on the news, I would interview someone on the news, and they would call me the next day and say, my phone was ringing off the hook. I got 2 clients, and it doesn't always happen that way. But when people see you on TV, there's this thing, it's a little smoke and mirrors, but they do assume that you must really know your stuff. Otherwise you wouldn't be interviewed on television.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the power of PR. The power of PR is it's a third party validation.
Yes.
And it's very believable, especially when it's on the news. But so everybody, you heard 3 really important tips here about how to compose a decent pitch that the media is going to pay attention to. Statistics, trends, projections, right? Would you also consider projection as a prediction, or is that different?
Yep. It's a prediction. If we go back to the real estate example, these guys get that delivered to their inbox every day. They don't even have to go look for a prediction or a projection. It's projected that next year, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and if every business owner sits down and thinks about this for a minute, it's projected that next year this is happening in my industry.
Yeah.
Things change. There are projections, there are trends, there are things that change. I was just working with a interior designer the other day who's a client, and she was like, well, what in the world would my trends be? I said, are you kidding? You're an interior designer. Your whole world is trends. And seasonal is another one. Seasonal always is a good basis for a good news hook. And of course, I teach people how to flesh this out into how they would present it. But the long story short is, every industry has something different going on in the winter than it does in the summer. And news and lifestyle shows, news is what people are talking about right now.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we're not talking about the same stories in a newsroom in July that we are in December.
Yeah.
The news is constantly looking for different ways to tell the story about 4th of July, different ways to tell a Christmas story, different ways to tell a Memorial Day story, a Labor Day story. We don't want to sound the same all the time. So when you learn how to tie in yourself to seasonal things as well, those make for fantastic news
Yeah,
hosts.
those are great. I mean, just sitting here listening to you brings me back to the days when I, worked at agencies, PR agencies, and we would sit around in pitch meetings, helping each other come up with different angles for our clients. I mean, that's really what you do. It's very, very creative, very creative.
Yeah.
So, okay, fabulous info on all of that. Let's the last couple questions before we end here. Let me kind of bring it back to Joy and maybe you sharing a quick client story, kind of a before and after. And that is, being that I advocate and aspire for, creative entrepreneurs, our audience, to use the metric of joy, right, and intuition as I call it their first of several priorities to determine where they're going to focus, right, every day and their talents more often. Follow that joy, right? What brings you the most joy in what you're doing?
Oh, I love that question because I thought about it so seriously today. What brings me the most joy is freedom, my freedom. I have a 5-month-old puppy who literally during this whole interview has been trying to bite my toes under the table. And I'm home with her. And we had to actually stop the interview once. I'll just tell everyone because she was barking.
Yeah.
And Marla, thanks for being so cool about that. But before I started with you today, I got to take her down to the park. You know how much joy that brings a former newscaster? I was out the door. I mean, it could almost bring me to tears. I was out the door every day, either at 2:30 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, and gone, chained to those newsrooms. And I loved it. I'm not bitching here. But the freedom now, the freedom to take Gracie down to the park and walk around with her and just smell the roses. And I will tell you, I still feel like I'm cheating.
Oh, interesting.
Marla, I still feel like I'm skipping school. I'm like, wait, I'm taking a lunch break. I had a great morning. I talked to clients. I was in meetings with my Inspired Living team. I was preparing for this amazing interview. I was working. I still felt like I was skipping school when I left my apartment with my dog to go enjoy the park for
that mindset, the work ethic mindset that says you have to be doing it a certain way in order to seem like it's work.
Exactly. So that's what really brings me joy now, is realizing that you can bring value to your craft, to your business, to the world, to your clients, and you can still bring joy to yourself. Every single day, those little things, those little teeny things. I enjoy. What brings me joy too is not having to travel to make a difference in someone's life.
Yeah.
I can sit here on a Zoom now, and I know it's been a real learning curve for a lot of people, but I can change somebody's life on a Zoom call, and that the power behind that brings me so much joy.
Huge. It's
so much joy. Yeah.
I mean, that's the coaching industry. I mean, it's a, laptop lifestyle. We can coach anywhere in the world, which is really the basis too of my business model, because I love traveling to Italy or anywhere else for that matter, and be able to still run my business halfway around the world,
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. And the beauty, the freedom of working with someone like Keri Murphy, she is so supportive and encouraging to me. And she knows the value I bring to our clients. She does not care where I am.
Right.
She wants me plugged in and happy. And I'm like, you know what? A lot of times in corporate world or whatever, newsrooms are a bunch of, very cutthroat people all in a mosh pit of yucky sometimes. And I also made beautiful friends and lifetime relationships, but to be able to work for and with who I consider great human beings brings me more joy than I could ever tell you, because I get to choose now who I work for, who I work with. And all the coaches on our Inspired Living team are honestly my best friends. They have turned into my teachers.
Yeah.
and my family.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a lucky person to have found that. And people who haven't found it yet, please don't stop and don't think it isn't possible because it is.
It's 100% as long as you listen to your intuition.
Bingo.
So, all right, very good. So lastly, before we find out, how to get in touch with you and where to find you online. So give us, the one bit of key advice, for creative entrepreneurs listening. What would be one key advice around your expertise?
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what I would say. I meet very creative entrepreneurs constantly.
Yeah.
Who have not just a fear, but sometimes a borderline terror around video.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
These are stellar human beings doing God's work on changing the world out there and being creative and all of that. But if you push this stupid little record button, I don't know what they turn into. Now, these are people who can go speak on stages usually. They're fine and they're fine in front of anyone. But I would say one piece of key advice for them is to find a way to be yourself and use this thing called video, because it is not a performance. It is not to be judged or graded. It is simply a communication tool.
Yeah.
And that takes a mindset shift. But find a way to use it, because without it in today's marketplace, as you and I both know, that has changed. You will not be able to do as much good. You will not reach as many people as you should be, and that probably you're being called to reach. And you will miss out, I think, on the ripple effects of your brilliance and genius that you're supposed to be doing. So find a way. And that's what we love to do is get these people over the hump of the fear of using video and being recorded. And it's like, what do they say about funerals? They say, it's a true fear. People say I'd rather be in the coffin at the funeral than give the eulogy.
Oh, geez.
Right. I mean, I've heard that a lot. This public speaking fear is one of the greatest fears that people have. And it breaks my heart, because again, I have more fear of working through Google Docs than I do of public speaking. But again, we went through why that is.
Yeah, of course.
The way I just pop out of bed in the morning. I hope that these entrepreneurs out there, everybody who's trying to grow a business, learns that visibility is really the only way you can do it anymore, because the old way of being somewhere all the time to meet new people and spread your word, that whatever it is you're spreading, make the world a better place, has got to now be spread through a camera lens. And and it makes me sad when people don't get through that.
Yeah. So give an example, and I know this is important. Give an example of talking with people versus talking at people on the camera.
Yeah, you listened, didn't you? So I was actually taught this as a young news anchor by a really good consultant, Magid Consultants. And I was a young news anchor, and I was trying to be a news anchor, and I was really news anchoring it up, man.
There's the voice. There's the news anchor voice.
There's my Kelley Jig. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, Treasure Valley. That was me in Idaho and Boise back in the day. I was being someone else, and I was talking at people. When I learned that being a news anchor is talking with people, not at them, and I was given permission by someone to act this way on camera, it changed everything. So even if you're a big personality, even if you want to give a bunch of information, we feel it as viewers and listeners if you are talking at us or talking with us. So here's how I learned it. This is really cool. This consultant came in. I was the morning anchor in Salt Lake City at KSL, the NBC affiliate. Okay. And I had 30 minutes with this consultant. And I walked in with my yellow legal pad and a pen. And I was like, go. How do I be a better anchor? I'm ready to take notes. And she had a little tape recorder, and she turned it around. She pointed it at me and she hit record and she just started asking me about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was asking me about the funnest thing I had done last year and the trip I had planned and what was really bothering me. And that was right when my father had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And I talked about that. And I talked about how exhausted I was because I was sleep deprived from anchoring morning shows for 5 years and blah, blah. But I'm looking at the clock going, okay, lady, can you give me some advice here? I don't really want to talk about myself. And so I had 10 minutes left, whatever. She spun it around, rewound the tape, pushed play and said, Kelley, I want you to watch yourself. And I said, okay. And she said, did you hear all of what you did with your voice? She's like, you were down here when you were talking about your dad. And you were way up here when you were talking about that vacation you took and how fun it was. And she said, and some words you said really fast like this, but when you wanted to make a point, you slowed down. And I said, yeah. And she said, and did you watch your face? Did you see all of the expressions? And I always joke that was pre-Botox, so there were a few more expressions than there are now. I was in my 20s. I hadn't started that yet.
Yeah.
I said, well, yeah. And she said, we like you a lot. And she said, I hereby give you permission to do the news as yourself.
Nice.
As Kelley Day. She said, give me more Kelley. And I still, Marla, I get goosebumps when I tell the story because that was my moment where I went, wait a minute. This is going to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
I don't have to bark at you. I don't have to talk at you. I can just be me and tell you things. And she was like, please do. We love we like your personality.
Yeah.
So I thought this is going to be easier to do. So that's when I started talking with my viewers instead of at them. And, an example I always give is there's the Rose Festival in Portland, Oregon. And every year on the news, we say it's Rose Festival time. And, I used to, I would have said, tonight is night one of the Rose Festival starts downtown Portland tonight. This starts and that starts. But instead, I would start the story by saying, guess what tonight is? I'll never forget when I was a kid going to the Rose Festival. And the first time I was on that Ferris wheel, that was my favorite part. What's your favorite part of Rose Festival? Mm-hmm. So it starts tonight. And tomorrow is the big parade. And I'm so excited because my co-anchor and I are going to be out there on the parade route. Do you see how I'm talking with you instead of
conversational style?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially you're having a conversation like you would, just like the example you gave. And the pieces of it, or I should say the kind of keys to walk away with. And I wrote down being vulnerable, obviously having voice, tone, and expression, in inflections, be relatable. In other words, just talk like you are having a conversation, opposed to what, trust me, I know you were taught a media personality in college. Right? You're taught back in the 80s and 90s, right, to be a certain personality. And I know they still do today on some level. But yes, those are good points. That's the difference. Have a conversational style. It's the same thing, Kelley, and you know this, as writing today for content.
Yep.
So social content with how you write on your website. It needs to be first person conversational, like you're talking with somebody. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people make when they're making video or they're being interviewed is that they've written down what they're going to say or how they're going to answer questions. Well, no one's ever going to read it. They're only going to hear it.
Right.
So I know how to write for the ear because for 23 years, I wrote scripts every day for the ear. Yeah. I guarantee you, all of you listening out there, unless you've been in the newsroom, don't know how to write for the ear. You know how to write for the eye. You know how to write something that someone's going to read.
Yeah.
The eye. So again, bullet pointing is one of the biggest things I tell people when they're going to answer questions on the news or they're going to do some video.
Yep.
bullet point, and then trust yourself. You know your stuff.
Have a conversation.
You have a conversation.
Yeah.
And if I saw you at a Sunday barbecue, I always say, would you have to write down
I know, right?
what you're going to say if I asked you about your business?
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
But I need to give our clients permission to speak that way on camera and to speak that way in interviews, because without being given that permission, like you said, Marla, we all have this thing in our head.
Yeah.
This is a big performance we're giving.
Correct.
And it's like, no, it's not a performance. We're just talking. We're having a conversation.
That's right.
And that's a big breakthrough point that I love getting people to, because then they get to use all this visibility and do more good in the world instead of hiding in the shadows.
Yeah, well, and the fear that it helps, dispel the fear, because they can get to be themselves. Yeah. And it's the same way in writing. When clients ask me, well, how do I write, for example, my brand story, right? How do I write my core brand story? I said, well, first, it needs to be in first person conversational, not third person. And you write like you're talking. You don't write corporate. You don't write, just write as if you're going to be talking it.
And that's very hard for people to do. That took me years, Marla, to craft in my TV news script writing. In fact, I would write the scripts, and then my producers who I was learning from would say, you wrote that like a newspaper article. You did not write that like a TV news script, Kelley. We can't even read it.
That's right.
And I call it word salad, Marla, because a lot of times if you read out loud what you wrote, your mouth can't even say the words, and it turns into word salad half the time.
It's pretty dry. I mean,
I tell people to just talk into their phones sometimes when they're writing, when they're trying to plan stuff out. I always tell them, instead of your first thing being typing it or writing it with a pen, make your first thing be speaking it. Speak it into your phone. Just push record and speak it and listen to it back. And chances are there's more of you in there than there would be in the written word.
Yeah, good.
Because it's coming from your voice. It's coming from inside of you. It's coming from your, like you just said, Marla, your authentic way of communicating, not the way that we were taught to write a paper in college.
God. Terrible. Yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, we could definitely talk for another hour, but we can't. Okay. So, and maybe we do a part two. Maybe we do a part two. So, my dear Kelley, tell my listeners, where can they get in touch with you, and what are you offering?
Yes. So we've got this timing worked out great, because we're doing what we call a convert on camera challenge for Inspired Living, and it is going to be the week of October 23rd. Okay, convert on camera, and it's Keri Murphy with Inspired Living. She teaches every day that week for an hour. It's just 1 hour of your time. It's free. Okay. It's at 11 o'clock Pacific. And our main goal is to get your head wrapped around, again, how to speak on camera and use video to convert into clients. So in other words, we're using this as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
But it goes back to so much of what I was just talking about, which is get out of your head and get into your heart when you're creating a video. It's a lot harder to do than it is to say, but Keri is a master, and she brings her whole heart to teaching this. So we're doing that challenge the week of the 23rd. Our website is inspiredliving.tv, and we'll put that in the show notes.
Yep.
There's a registration link, and again, even if you do nothing but just tune in and listen, people tell me all the time when we do this challenge, I got more value out of that than any course I've actually paid for, because we believe that if more, especially female entrepreneurs, understand how to use their voice with video, that the world is going to be a better place. Period. It just is. And Keri has taught me how to give this stuff away. And so I'd love for you to join us. And during the week, we ask people to actually do videos and post them in a closed Facebook group.
Terrific.
Because doing is where you learn, not just sitting around and listening. So
Yeah.
I would love everybody to come to it, and I know you'll learn something. I usually pop in during the week too,
Good.
and talk a little media stuff with her as well.
Terrific. Okay. And we can find you and obviously Keri on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Exactly.
And the links will be in the show notes, everybody. Wonderful. Okay. Kelley, thank you so much for
Marla, thank
being
you.
here.
And you know what? This is so fun to do. And I hope everyone really hears this. Like, I was booked on a podcast today. I wasn't booked on a podcast today. I just got to have a cool conversation with an amazing woman.
Yeah.
And so I hope everybody can shift their mindset around that when they have something to do that might make them nervous. It just show up as yourself, and it'll be so much more fun, and it'll be so much more easy, and you'll stay in your joy.
Wow, and well said by Kelley. So, all right, everyone, as you witnessed and heard, is that, there were some great examples that Kelley shared about, right, following your joy, listening to your intuition, okay? As you know, I aspire for you, right, to do that. Listen, in fact, this is the qualifier, is listen to your intuition first, not your head, not your logic, not your practicality. You use that to put feet on the intuition that you listened to. So the formula, everyone, again, is listen to the intuition, and we need to learn how, be happy to teach you, but build that spiritual intuitive muscle, because, and here's the other qualifier, that which is coming through as intuition is meant for you and meant for your evolution, small or large. Getting advice outside of yourself is not always meant for you. Okay? Your intuition will always steer you in the right direction. And then you put the logic behind it, as in, what are then the steps and what do I do to take it into action? Okay? All right. Okay, everyone. Tons of love to you all. And again, Kelley, thank you so much. And we are done. And I'll be talking to you all in the next episode. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening in. You can find more entrepreneurial stories and resources at marladiane.com. And while you're there, enjoy my 3 free downloads to up-level your business and your life. How about you take a screenshot of this episode and tag me on Instagram by sharing your highlights of what you learned today? I'd love to connect there with you. Until next episode, take care.